Okay, here it is. I got the message. Marjorie Taylor Greene is resigning from Congress after she boxed herself in. Now, look, the reason why she's resigning, I, there are some other reasons I assume that I do not know. But I will tell you what I do know. What I do know is that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been one of Donald Trump's biggest defenders in Congress. That she was his defender on the campaign trail, she was his defender in Congress, and she was his defender when she was a Qer. And she was on that QAnon train way before when she was in Congress. And during her dumbest moments, during some of her politically witty moments, during her somewhat moments of any significance, she would constantly be flying that Trump flag. And by flying that Trump flag at every single moment, by having those moments where she goes out there and says the Ukrainians are harvesting the organs of children to fund the war effort, and goes out there and says a million different ridiculous, nonsensical things that are both misinformed and I think purposefully attention grabbing, she had made a real enemy of much of those on the American left, but also those in the center, essentially making it so that her crowd was the crowd on the right. Now, those in her district largely supported her. And now that doesn't mean that everybody liked her, but you could get a majority that at least thought that even if they didn't like the way that she presented herself, even if they didn't like the way that she necessarily conducted herself online or every single crazy theory that she threw out there, they thought that her ability to get attention, her ability to fundraise, her ability to get her voice out there could get resources to their district when otherwise, if there was somebody else in that position, maybe they could not accomplish that. And while that might not have been the position of everyone, that was the position of a lot of people who supported her in that role, and at least enough of the Republican primary based in her district that there wasn't much of a primary challenge to her there. So before you could say, oh, she was under the immediate threat of being ousted or that she stood no chance in a Republican primary, I don't think that to be the case. But after sending the center and the left against her, period, and then having her stand on Jeffrey Epstein, which then angered the president of the United States, and Donald Trump started to say that Marjorie Taylor Greene lost her way, that she's not really a conservative anymore, that she's no longer truly MAGA. He stopped returning her calls. He stopped listening to her, and he even directly started slandering her character, slandering her. And so when you think of where Marjorie Taylor Greene is, look, her stand on the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, I'm sure won her some friends. And due to just the basic polling of where this country is, the vast majority of Americans want more transparency on the Jeffrey Epstein case. And I'm sure that is also true in her district. So that is something that is not necessarily in and of itself a political loser. But when you already have lost the left, when you've already lost much of the center, when you've already gotten, I would even say, portions of the center right to start to be disgusted with you, and then you do something like this isn't going to win you over with the left. This isn't going to win you over with the center. And I don't think it's going to win her over or win over the center right that has been disgusted by you for a myriad of reasons. So this is something that can help beat the drumbeat for people who like you, but the sacrifice of losing Trump's favor and possibly getting him to run primary opponents against you must feel like quite a betrayal considering the amount she has stuck out her neck for him. And maybe she looked at the end of this tunnel and she looked at the reason as to why Donald Trump was turning his back on her, why Donald Trump was critiquing her more and more and more, and saw it was based in the Epstein case, saw that he really didn't want to compromise on it, and it might not be for good reasons. It might be because there's compromising information about him, or maybe that there's compromising information about his donors or people around him or businessmen that he is in good relations with, that he wants to keep in good relations with, businessmen who could be currently enriching him or have dirt on him, or for any other number of reasons. But she just could not accept it. She would not back off of the fact that she was going to vote for the discharge petition. She was going to sign it. And so this led to Trump turning on her and having Trump, as well as the left, as well as the center, as well as the center right, all against her, leaving her with just a small conglomerate of right and far right people who would be with her. Maybe in her district, she could win a primary, maybe she couldn't, but it maybe just became too much. It could have really just become too much that she saw the cards further stacking against her. She knew it would be a fight to get reelected. And even if she did get reelected, what would she have? 2 more years standing in the corpse of the movement that she fought for, who now does not like her and has now been mobilized against her. She might have people that she thinks are, with it, or at least her idea of with it, that would still stick with her. She'd be maybe welcome in certain bars, but not welcome with the president, not welcome with the other side, not welcome with the center, and disgusted by the center right in your own party. She'd be pretty boxed into a very, very small space in the party. A space that will make it, no matter what, a challenge to get elected, because it was going to be a fight in the primary if Trump's pushing a primary opponent. And then maybe you'll glide in the general, but you're not going to be able to get the fundraising numbers you used to, especially if Trump is constantly spitballing you. And how much Trump spitballs you is going to really determine on what side of the bed he woke up that morning and how much time he has. And you can't control for that. You can't control for how much damage that's going to do. And in other instances, in other races in the Republican Party, that ultimately did not end up being a killer, the primary. But considering that her base is the MAGA base, she was born and bred in the MAGA base, going to be very difficult. And so I think that is probably the biggest contributor as to why she's making this decision. That being boxed in and from this many angles just didn't make it worth it anymore.
Hi, everyone. I've always represented the common American man and woman as a member of the House of Representatives, which is why I've always been despised in Washington, D.C., and just never fit in. Americans are used by the political industrial complex of both political parties, election cycle after election cycle, in order to elect whichever side can convince Americans to hate the other side more. And the results are always the same. No matter which way the political pendulum swings, Republican or Democrat, nothing ever gets better for the common American man or woman. The debt goes higher. Corporate and global interests remain Washington's sweethearts. American jobs continue to be replaced, whether it's by illegal labor or legal labor by visas or just shipped overseas. Small businesses continue to be swallowed by big corporations. Americans' hard-earned tax dollars always fund foreign wars, foreign aid, and foreign interest, and the spending power of the dollar continues to decline. The average American family can no longer survive on a single breadwinner's income, as both parents have to work in order to simply survive. And today, many in my children's generation feel hopeless for their future and don't think they will ever realize the American dream. And that breaks my heart. I ran for Congress in 2020 and have fought every single day believing that Make America Great Again meant America first. I have one of the most conservative voting records in Congress, defending the First Amendment, Second Amendment, unborn babies because I believe God creates life at conception, and I love to fight for the little guy. Strong, safe borders, I have fought hard for that. I fought against COVID tyrannical insanity and mandated mass vaccinations, and I've never voted to fund foreign wars with your hard-earned tax dollars. However, with almost 1 year into our majority, the legislature has been mostly sidelined. We endured an 8-week shutdown, wrongly, resulting in the House not working for the entire time, and we are entering campaign season, which means all courage leaves and only safe campaign re-election mode is turned on in the House of Representatives. During the longest shutdown in our nation's history, I raged against my own speaker and my own party for refusing to proactively work diligently to pass the plan to save Americans' health care and protect Americans from outrageous, overpriced, and unaffordable health insurance policies. The House should have been in session working every day to fix this disaster, but instead America was force-fed disgusting political drama once again from both sides of the aisle on television every single day. My bills, which reflect many of President Trump's executive orders, like calling for a new census counting Americans only to draw new districts, making English the official language of the U.S., making it a felony to medically trans a minor, and other bills like eliminating capital gains taxes on the sale of your primary home and eliminating H-1B visas, just sit. They all sit collecting dust. That's how it is for most members of Congress.
Well, yeah, because they just don't have the majorities to pass them.
Bills. The Speaker never brings them to the floor for a vote. Many common Americans are no longer easily convinced by paid political propaganda spokespersons and consultants on TV and paid shills on social media obediently serving with cult-like conviction to force others to swallow the political party talking points. Because they know how much credit card debt they have. They know how much their bills have gone up over the past 5 years. They actually do their own grocery shopping and know food costs too much. Their rent has increasingly gone up and up. They have been outbid by corporate asset managers too many times when they put in an offer to buy a house. They have been laid off after being forced to train their visa holding replacement. The college degree they were told to earn only left them in debt with no big six-figure salary. They see more homeless people than ever on their own community streets. They can't afford health insurance or practically any insurance, and they just aren't stupid. These are the people I represent and love because that is who all of my family and friends are, common Americans. I've been blessed to represent the 14th District of Georgia for 5 years. The district is filled with some of the most wonderful, kind-hearted, God-fearing, patriotic, hardworking people you will ever meet. Good, regular, common Americans. I've worked hard to bring taxpayer dollars back home to help district needs. I impeached Biden's Secretary of Homeland after watching my constituents die as he facilitated dangerous open border invasion into America.
What does that matter? Like, if you listen to what she's talking about, she said, I introduced this bill that did nothing, I introduced this bill that did nothing, I impeached somebody that did nothing, I did this, I did that. She had probably one of the most ineffective stays in Congress when it comes to the actual ebbs and flows. I mean, she was on some committees, and I guess that is of some significance, that she was probably there to help strike down or not strike down some things. But when it comes to actually passing substantive legislation that got on the books, she really didn't do anything. And now she's leaving Congress having done nothing, with essentially the sign-off saying that, oh, you know, things are too divided and it's all partisan and it's not for the people. As one of the most well-known partisans in the country, one of the most divisive partisans in the country, who said some of the most crazy, batshit, nuts nonsense. It's quite bizarre.
And
it's like Alex Jones coming up and saying, you know, there's too much hyperbole in politics now. I mean, look, the partisanship that she abandoned on the Epstein thing is admirable in and of itself, but she was so horribly partisan on so many other accounts and horribly misinformed on so many other accounts and stuck her heels in the ground over it and would call those who weren't with her on it like demons and evil and all these different ways. It just makes it so that it doesn't come off as particularly genuine, even though her stand on the discharge petition in and of itself is laudable.
And I led the effort to defund hard-left politically biased NPR and PBS and the corrupt USAID, and I did that as chair of the DOJ subcommittee. I have fought harder than almost any other elected Republican to elect Donald Trump and Republicans to power. I traveled the country for years. I spent millions of my own money. I missed precious time with my family that I can never get back. And I showed up in places like outside the New York courthouse in Collect Pond Park against a raging leftist mob as Trump faced Democrat lawfare. Meanwhile, most of the establishment Republicans who secretly hate him and who stabbed him in the back and never defended him against anything have all been welcomed in right after the election. And I will never forget the day I had to leave my mother's side as my father had brain surgery to remove cancerous tumors in order to fly to Washington, D.C. to defend President Trump and vote no against the Democrats' second impeachment in 2021. My poor father and my poor mother, it was way too much for all of us. Through it all, I never changed or went back on my campaign promises and only disagreed in a few areas, like my stance against H-1Bs replacing American jobs, AI state moratoriums, debt for life 50-year mortgage scams, standing strongly against all involvement in foreign wars, and demanding the release of the Epstein files. Other than that, my voting record has been solidly with my party and the president. Loyalty should be a two-way street, and we should be able to vote our conscience and represent our district's interests because our job title is literally representative. America first should mean America first and only Americans first, with no other foreign country ever being attached to America first in our halls of government. Standing up for American women who were raped at 14 years old, trafficked and used by rich, powerful men should not result in me being called a traitor and threatened by the President of the United States, whom I fought for.
Damn. The president called me a traitor because I wanted to stand up against trafficking of children. From Donald Trump's main glazer, Marjorie Taylor Greene. From his main promoter. She's up in the club just like sign Trump just constantly. And it's gotten down to the point where hey, can you not call me a traitor for saying that we should not protect to abuse girls? You know, whatever's in there, it has to be awful. It really makes you think, what's Trump gonna pull at the last second to make sure whatever it is that he fought so hard to stop from getting out there, that he's gonna cull this type of support from these types of devoted. I mean, like, we know how much he loves loyalty. Does he just see Marjorie Taylor Greene as disloyal? Is Marjorie Taylor Greene not loyal enough for Trump? Has to be completely just based in the figure and not in any principle, no matter how diluted that is? It's gonna be a small clique around the man.
However, while yes, hurtful, my heart remains filled with joy, my life is filled with happiness, and my true convictions remain unchanged because my self-worth is not defined by a man, but instead by God, who created everything in existence. You see, I have never valued power, titles, or attention in spite of all the wrong assumptions about me. I do not cling to those things because they are meaningless and empty traps that hold too many people in Washington. I believe in term limits and do not think Congress should be a lifelong career or an assisted living facility. My only goal and desire has ever been to hold the Republican Party accountable for the promises it makes to the American people and put America first. And I have fought against Democrats' damaging policies like the Green New Deal, wide open, deadly, unsafe border policies, and the trans agenda on children and against women. With that has brought years of nonstop, never-ending personal attacks, death threats, lawfare, ridiculous slander and lies about me that most people could never withstand even for a single day. It has been unfair and wrong, not only to me, but especially to my family, but it's been wrong to my district as well. I have too much self-respect and dignity.
She's so bitter. She's bitter because she gave the entirety of her public image to a movement only to be called a traitor because she felt too much pressure from the base of the party, which helped finance her with ungodly amounts of money, to tell them, like, just forget about Epstein. She couldn't say that. She couldn't say it, so she couldn't forget it. And that just was enough to make her a traitor. And that offense, plus looking down the barrel of what a primary and a continued stay in politics throughout the rest of the Trump presidency would mean, and she just checked out. She's done. So yeah, of course she's bitter. It was like all of her work was for no reason.
I love my family way too much, and I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for, only to fight and win my election while Republicans will likely lose the midterms, and in turn be expected to defend the president against impeachment after he hatefully dumped tens of millions of dollars against me and tried to destroy me. It's all so absurd and completely unserious. I refuse to be a battered wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better. If I am cast aside by the president and the MAGA political machine and replaced by neocons, big pharma, big tech, military-industrial war complex, foreign leaders, and the elite donor class that can never ever relate to real Americans, then many common Americans have been cast aside and replaced as well. There is no plan to save the world or a 4D chess game being played. When common American people realize and understand that the political industrial complex of both parties is ripping this country apart, that not one elected leader like me is able to stop Washington's machine from gradually destroying our country, and instead the reality is that they, common Americans, the people, possess the real power over Washington, then I'll be here by their side to rebuild it. Until then, I'm going back to the people that I love, to live my life to the fullest as I always have, and I look forward to a new path ahead. I'll be resigning from office with my last day being January 5th, 2026, and I look forward to seeing many of you again sometime in the future. May God bless you all, Marjorie. And may God bless America.
Bye, Marjorie. So she's gone. What does this say? Well, this shows that everybody who seems to be taking a principled stand, whether it be Don Bacon, whether it be Marjorie Taylor Greene, they seem to be people with not a lot of time on the clock. People who are either checking out so they feel like they can take these risks, or are people who have no option, i.e., you're in a purple district. But even those people are tending to break with the president just so they don't get his ire and make sure that when the primary time comes around, they can still get those Republican bucks. But if they can get those Republican bucks, but then cannot remove themselves from a, quite frankly, unpopular administration come midterm time, as he's been unable to recover the economy, which is the thing that got him elected in the first place, then, I mean, it's one thing to resign. It's another thing to be voted out. Most people would rather resign. Most people would rather be like, you know what? I'm just not going to run again. But that is also an interesting point by her. If she was to stay in her position and Trump was to get down there in the trenches and fight with her, that's millions upon millions of dollars spent by both camps, her and them, that could have been spent on other Republican primaries in purple states where they want to stop the Democrats from taking back the House, that instead would have been spent on trying to fight Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat and who gets it in Georgia. So actually, what Marjorie Taylor Greene did, while also probably the quickest way to rip off the Band-Aid, also probably did limit some financial bleeding for the party come around election time if Trump really did intend to deliver on pulling the trigger against Marjorie.